Today I'm going to be introducing Atkins Acuity. I think most of you will probably know of Atkins, but you won't know of Acuity. Acuity is a part of Atkins, and the idea is to give this end-to-end advisory services. Let's see, yeah. Quite interestingly, earlier this morning, we heard about the problems with infrastructure, energy and infrastructure. This is a massive, massive problem which the world is facing. There is need for infrastructure everywhere. It's going to help any economy which is growing, any economy which exists. Biggest problem you'll see is that there is a shortfall of money on infrastructure works. There is also a huge problem that 98% of mega infrastructure projects overrun by 30% in cost. So, what does Acuity do? I thought I was going to have some speaking notes down there, but I don't have them, so I'm going to have to remember these parts. It's okay, we'll manage. So, Acuity looks at bringing another angle to consultancy services. It's an area which primarily the Big Four, the KPMGs, the Ernst & Youngs, PricewaterhouseCoopers, etc., they've occupied. We have previously been working in this area, but never with the real focus. We're now saying that if we bring real advisory services to connect with our engineering services, then we can offer something bigger, something more holistic, and something which is going to add value to the clients. We work in different sectors. These sectors, which are given up here, I'll go through each one in a bit, complement the present engineering and architectural sectors which Atkins gives. Economic planning. This is a major element which is usually separated from the straight engineer. He has an idea of the project, he tells you how much it's going to cost, etc., but he doesn't really understand the bigger picture there. The financial planning, there's 8 different sectors here, but for me personally, this is the biggest advantage to us. We've got people in our organization now who can talk to clients about funding. And I'm not just talking about private clients, but also government. How can you get funding? Where can you get it from? What is going to be your cost-benefit analysis? This is something which at the very beginning of a project really needs to be discussed. I know there's always feasibility studies done, but there's usually, what I've seen coming in at a later stage as an engineer, as a consultant, there's a gap between what was originally discussed and what is actually possible. The strategic planning, we have different areas there. Again, this is you could say the third dimension of the work. Organizational development. Every organization needs change. It needs efficiency. Again, as we were talking this morning, how do we tackle the new problems which the new world is bringing to us? Organizations have to change with that. A lot of the organizations are quite archaic, so there really needs to be looking into a capacity building part here. P3 management, this is portfolio, program, and project management. This is vital. You've got massive programs going on in the region. An interesting one was the social housing in Saudi, where the intention was they were going to build 500,000 houses in the space of 5 years. This started 6 years ago, and I think they've built 30. A lot of this is because somebody wasn't really understanding what the management of this massive program is about, what sort of people you needed to bring into all the different organizations that you needed to tackle. The operations improvement, again, just going back an hour, we were talking about efficiency. How can we do things cheaper? Because there's less money, there's less time, etc., etc. The due diligence, going in, looking at an existing project, looking at an existing program, how do we take that forward? Rather than just build on it, can we look at it and say what is good and what isn't good? So, how does Acuity do it? Well, why is it different? what we've done in Atkins is that we've always dabbled in this area of giving this sort of advice. We've got some very good people who've been with Atkins many years, who work in this area. But we actually went out, starting about 5 years ago, and headhunted certain people to supplement. We've got people who've joined us from international law companies, international banks. We've got people from the World Bank. We've got people from the PPP centers around the world. All people who've actually sat on the other side of the desk from us, often supporting clients in a different role, but we've integrated them into what we're doing. The important thing is to build on the engineering expertise that Atkins has, but to come along and say, how can we improve? How can we add value? We see that with our financial advice, we are actually saving money. Future-proofing. We talk about investing in infrastructure, okay? Here's a good one for you. We're talking about building roads. Why do we actually need these huge roads? Because if you think about it, in 15, 20 years' time, who's to say there's not a hyperbole between Muscat and Salalah, such that goods arriving in Salalah can turn up in Muscat in 15 minutes? Why do we need all those other roads? There's a lot of thought that has to go into at another level, that when you make a massive infrastructure investment, that you have to be thinking about, where is the world going? Of course, you have to provide for now, you have to provide for 5 years, 10 years, but you also, infrastructure needs to be around for many years. So you need to really invest wisely. Again, we were talking earlier about solar energy. You know, we need to be thinking about, do we really need to transport energy from one side to the other of the world? Can we not develop it in local areas? And what sort of energy do we need? The whole purpose is, rather than come with theories, you need to come with a solution. It's very good to sit as an advisor and waffle away and talk about this and even put it in poetry. Fantastic. But if there isn't a solution at the end of it, what's the point? So, how do we behave? We are assured. We know what we're doing. And I can promise you that if any of you came to employ Acuity, you wouldn't get me. I've had to step in. Our Acuity MD was delayed in Dubai and couldn't make it. These guys know what they're talking about. They join with me, with the Atkins engineering part, to give the solutions. We're agile. We have people all around the world. We will, in 2 months' time, or 1 month, depending on the visa, have 2 Acuity people sitting in our business here. Not necessarily because we have Acuity work in Oman, but we want these people strategically located around the globe, strategically located in the Middle East. And these people are very mobile. We are always driven to finding the solution. It's not just coming in, giving something, and then disappearing. So here's a picture of a few of our people, in case you see them later. The guy at the very end over here, this is the CEO. He's a lawyer, ex-lawyer. He's come in. This young lady here, she's from the Far East. She was a PPP specialist in the PPP Center of Southeast Asia. The characters around there, but just to show you that we have brought in the right people to supplement the people which are already there. Now, the sectors we work in, there's the 4 infrastructure sectors. There's the water, transportation, energy, and city and urban infrastructure. But it's really important to say that when we talk about these sectors, we're not just talking about the hardcore infrastructure, the roads, etc. We're also talking about the social infrastructure, you know, the education, the health systems. All these are interlinked. It's all the infrastructures to the urban society. In a way, we are the urban cowboy. You know, we're looking at sort of providing all the services that are required within urban. Not just the built environment, but also the thought and the strategic environment. So it's important that whenever we do something, we create a legacy. It is no good building something and not just being a CEO and having the top line, but actually after construction, it is something which is added value. From a very personal point of view, I was in Oman many years ago in the 80s, 90s. I love it when I go up to Nizwa. That was one of my jobs as a structural engineer. There is a legacy with the Nizwa souk being developed there with the diversion of the Wadi, etc. And all this, the Nizwa development, came about because of strategic planning, national planning, which was looking at how can we develop this traditional market town. Atkins were also involved with the UK, the London Olympics 2012. The legacy was a major, major part of all the work we did there, saying, okay, we're building for this wonderful stage that we're going to present what we are to the world, but we want it to be something which can also benefit the society later. Anybody that visits the old Olympic Park will see how it is totally not just supporting, but leading the local society there. So, we talked about acuity, and for those who don't know who Atkins has been around for 80-odd years. We've been in Oman for 35 years. We're 18,000 strong worldwide. We're 120 in Oman. We're 3,000 in region. We are engineers. We're architects. We are master planners. We have dabbled in advisory services because clients, we have long-standing clients we've worked with, clients who trust us. They've come to us and asked us for extra advice. Often there is another consultant involved. We've seen this need, we've listened to our clients, and we've gone on to try and develop acuity. If you look in the English Oxford Dictionary, acuity is described as sharpness and clarity of thought and perception. You have to say it a few times to get your tongue around it, but this is what we are trying to show our clients. Why did we separate this from Atkins? We wanted the clarity that you can get this service, because I think there are many companies like Atkins that were dabbling in this service. We are now saying, okay, the KPMGs, and excuse if anybody's here from one of the big four, this is our territory. We know more about it because we know the engineering part behind it. We're going to supplement it with the information we already have, with the knowledge, but we're also going to bring that knowledge in. Here's a list of the companies we're presently working with or have worked with in the last 5 years. A lot of these companies came about through Atkins. We are still a baby in terms of acuity, going out there selling our brand, but very often we have an introduction through our Atkins brand. There's many companies there, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai, we've worked a lot there with the RTA, we've worked with the Housing Authority in Abu Dhabi. A massive one, which I'll come to in a bit, is one we did for Qatar, where we had the CPO, the Central Planning Office. So I'm going to run through now a list of projects we've done. I won't bore you with going into great detail for them, but just to give you an idea of the type of works that we're doing. And these works are not just done from one location, they're done from around the world. People move. We have acuity people around the globe, we have them around the Middle East, and we're active. From Oman at the moment, we're active in Kigali, in East Africa. This is a project we've done for Malawi. This is looking at the road structure. We were looking at a nationwide transportation study. Then we went on to Saudi Arabia. Here we were working for the Economics City Authority, where here they were saying, okay guys, we've got our authority here, things are working, but somehow we're missing a point. We went in and we looked at their organization. So we did a lot of capacity building, organizational changes there. In Abu Dhabi, very conscious of all the infrastructure they've been building. They're also conscious that if you look at the US, the UK, and other parts of Europe, etc., Australia, these countries are really struggling with the debt they've built up over the years in building their infrastructure. Abu Dhabi has built infrastructure. Abu Dhabi is still building it. And they're saying, okay, this is a major asset. How do we manage it? Through our other works with Abu Dhabi Municipality, we were called in to say, please help us manage our assets. We said, thank you very much. When does a consultant ever say no? We worked for them. Very successfully, we're achieving a 30% cost saving in the running of their assets, as well as a prolonged shelf life. Then we worked with European aid in the transport, and here it was in Turkey, where the Turkish infrastructure, I mean, people who've been to Turkey 15 years ago and go today, if any country can match the Middle East in terms of what changes have occurred, it must be Turkey. I mean, Istanbul is just mega today compared to what it was 15 years ago. And this has been driven very much by their infrastructure, enabling people to move, enabling energy to be moved from one place to another. That all said, they were saying, well, you know, we do need something which actually gives us a bit more security. And we want to make sure that suddenly our road network, our transport network, doesn't become a problem like Dubai in 2006, where it took 3 hours from Jebel Ali to the center. So there was a master plan carried out on the transportation systems there. Said these are the areas you really need to invest in. We looked at Kigali. This is something a bit more basic, where basically we're saying, can we have a centralized sewage treatment plant? Can we have a centralized sewage system? Huge help to the country. You get something like that in place, and the benefit downstream is massive. We've worked quite a bit in Sub-Sahara, sustainable energy for all. That's the SE for all. This is about looking at how can people living in different parts of Sub-Sahara Africa actually have access to sustainable energy. We've also worked with the Southern African Development Community, looking at their energy. How can we increase their energy? Well, by making it more efficient, looking at the usage. Again, earlier today in the panel discussion about, you know, it's actually quite easy. There's low-hanging fruit there to make it more efficient, but then you want to bring it to the second decimal place, you need some thinking. There's another one with water. This is the one I mentioned earlier in Qatar. Qatar has really struggled with its infrastructure. With the change in leadership some 10 years ago, suddenly there was a real movement to say, we have all this gas, let's do something with it. And people flocked to it. And if Dubai was a nightmare for traffic, Qatar was really an X-rated horror film. It's so tough to move from one place to another. We were working there for the transport and infrastructure authorities, and they started asking some questions. We brought some people into Atkins, and they started working there. Before we knew it, a team of 3 people had become 10 and grew to 120, grew to a maximum of 200. This became the Central Planning Office. The organization is still there. It is now coming down. We have finished our planning works in terms of what infrastructure do you need, what sewage do you need, what roads do you need. It was a massive job. The CPO had a direct line to the Prime Minister. The big problem in all our countries is that every department, every ministry has their own focus, which is quite right. And the Prime Minister is the one that pulls it all together and then decides that housing gets it over aviation or et cetera, et cetera. That was a massive and exciting project for us. It's another one with water, wastewater. And we're finishing off, we have one with Mazda. Mazda, wonderful organization. A lot of money behind it. You know, they have a saying, the rich get richer. And Abu Dhabi was well off and managed to set up Mazda. It is a really focused organization, but it was quite new as an organization, so it needed a lot of corporate governance. They called us in, and we're involved in their QHSE, setting the standards, setting the procedures. Ladies and gentlemen, that should be it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.